It's called The Outing, generally, but its actual proper name is A Story, and there's one word you do need to know, and that is charabanc. Now, many here will know what that means, but for anyone who doesn't, it's a small bus. So that's it. Anyway, a story. If you can call it a story. There's no real beginning or end, and there's very little in the middle. It's all about a day's outing by charabanc to Porthcawl, which of course the charabanc never reached, and it happened when I was so high, much nicer. I was staying at the time with my uncle and his wife. Although she was my aunt, I never thought of her as anything but the wife of my uncle, partly because he was so big and trumpeting, red-hairy, and used to fill every inch of the hot little house like an old buffalo squeeze into an airing cupboard, and partly because she was so small, silk and quick, and made no noise at all as she whisked about on padded paws, dusting the china dog, feeding the buffalo, setting the mousetraps that never caught her. And once she sneaked out of the room to give it all a nibbling tail off, I forgot that she'd ever been there. But there he was, always a steaming hulk of an uncle, his braces straining like hawsers, crammed behind the counter of the tiny shop at the front of the house, and breathing like a brass band, or guzzling and blustering in the kitchen like his gutsy summer. Too big for everything but the great black boots of his boots. As he ate, the house grew smaller. He billowed out over the furniture, the loud check meadow of his waistcoat littered as though after a picnic with cigarette ends, peelings, cabbage stalks, bird bones, gravy, and the forest fire of his head crackled candles from the sun. She was so small, she could hit him only when she stood in a chair. And every Saturday night, at 10:30, he would lift her up under his arm onto a chair in the kitchen so that she could hit him on the head with whatever was handy, which was always a china dog. On Sundays, and when pickled, he sang high tenor and had one many cups. Now, the first I heard of the annual outing was when I was sitting one evening on a bag of rice behind the counter under one of my uncle's stomachs, reading an advertisement for sheep dip, which is all there was to read. Now, the shop was full of my uncle, and when Mr. Benjamin Franklin, Mr. Weasley, Noah Bowen, and Will Sentry came in, I thought it would burst. It was like all being together in a drawer that smelled of cheese and turps and twist tobacco and sweet biscuits and snuff and waistcoat. Mr. Benjamin Franklin said that he had collected enough money for the charabanc and 20 cases of pale ale, and £1 apiece over that he would distribute among the members when they first stopped for refreshments. And he was about sick and tired, he said, of being followed by Will Sentry. All day long, wherever I go, he's after me like a collie with one eye. I got a shadow on my own, and a dog. I don't need no Tom, Dick, no Harry pursuing me with his dirty muffler on. Will Sentry blushed. It's only early. I've got a bicycle. A man has no privacy at all, Mr. Franklin. I tell you, he sticks so close, I'm afraid to go at the back in case I sit in his lap. He's a wonder to me, he said. He don't follow me into bed at night. Wife only, Will Sentry said, and that started Mr. Franklin off again, and I tried to soothe him down by saying, don't you mind Will Sentry, no harm in old Will. He's only keeping an eye on the money, Benji. And I honest, asked Mr. Franklin in surprise. There was no answer for some time. Then Noah Bowen said, you know what they can do. Ever since Bob the Fisher, you don't feel safe with the new treasure. Do you think I'm going to drink the outing funds like Bob the Fiddle did, said Mr. Franklin. Right, said my uncle slowly. I resign, said Mr. Franklin. Not with our money, Will Sentry said. Go put that dynamite in the salmon keep, said Mr. Weasley. But nobody took any notice of him, and after a time they all began to play cards in the thickening dusk of a hot, cheesy shop. And my uncle blew and bugled whenever he won, and Mr. Weasley grumbled like a dredger, and I fell asleep on the matted meadow of Uncle's waistcoat. On Sunday evening, after Bethesda, Mr. Franklin walked into the kitchen while my uncle and I were eating sardines with spoons from the tin because it was Sunday and his wife would not let us play drafts. She was somewhere in the kitchen too. Perhaps she was in the grandmother clock hanging from the weights and breathed. Then a second later, the door opened again and Will Sentry edged into the room, twiddling his hard round hat. He and Mr. Franklin sat down on the settee, stiff and mothballed and black, in their chapel and funeral suits. "I bought the list," said Mr. Franklin. "Every member fully paid. You ask Will Sentry." My uncle put on spectacles, wiped his whiskery mouth with a handkerchief big as Union Jack, laid down his spoon of sardines, took Mr. Franklin's list of names, removed the spectacles so that he could read, and then ticked the names off one by one. "Enoch Davis. Aye, he's good with his fists. You never know. Little Gerwine. Very melodious babe. Mr. Cadwallader. That's right. He could tell both in time better than my watch. Mr. Weasley. Of course. He's been to Paris. Pity he suffers so much in charabanc. Stopped us 9 times last year between the Beehive and the Red Dragon. Noah Boy. Very decent. Good time, like a perfect time. Never an argument with Noah Boy. Jenkins Laugharne. Keep him off economics. Cost us a plate glass window and 10 pints for the sergeant. Mr. Jervis. Very tidy. You tried to put a plate in the shower, Will Sentry said. Never let you in. Said my uncle. Will Sentry blushed. Sitting by the sailor's arms. Well, you got to keep in there. Old Old Jones. Why Old Old Jones? Will Sentry said. Old Old Jones always good, said my uncle. I looked down at the kitchen table. The tin of sardines was gone. Gee, I said to myself, Uncle's wife is quick as a flash. Cuthbert Johnny Forthrighter. Now there's a card. He whistles after women, Will Sentry said. So do you, said Mr. Benjamin Franklin, in your mind. My uncle at last approved the whole list, pausing only to say when he came across one name. If we weren't a Christian community, we chucked up Bob the Fiddle in the sea. We could do that. In Porthcawl, said Mr. Franklin. And soon after that he left, Will Sentry no more than an inch behind in their Sunday bright boots, squeaking on the kitchen cobbles. And then, suddenly, there was my uncle's wife, standing in front of the dresser with the china dog in one hand. By gee, I said to myself, did you ever see such a woman, if that is what she is? The lamps were not lit yet in the kitchen, and she stood in a wood of shadows with the plates on the dresser behind her, shining pink and white eyes. If you call on that outing on Saturday, Mr. Carmarthenshire, she said to my uncle in her small, silk voice, I'm going home to my mother's. Oh, I thought she's got a mother. Now there is one old ball mouse of 105 I won't be wanting to meet in a dark lane. It's me or the outing, Mr. Tom? I would have made my choice at once. But it was almost half a minute before my uncle said, Well then, Sarah, it's the outing, my love. He lifted her up under his arm onto a chair in the kitchen, and she hit him on the head with a china dog. And then I said good night. For the rest of the week, my uncle's wife was quiet and quick around the house with a darting duster. My uncle blew and bugled and swole, and I kept myself busy all the time being up to no good. And then at breakfast time on Saturday morning, the morning of the outing, I found a note on the kitchen table. It said, There's some eggs in the pantry. Take your boots off before you go to bed. My uncle's wife had gone as quick as a flash. When my uncle saw the note, he tugged out the flag of his handkerchief and blew such a hubbub of trumpets that the plates on the dresser shook. It's the same every year, he said. Then he looked at me.
But this year is different. Who'll have to come and out in who? And what the members will say, I dare not think. The charabanc pulled up outside, and when the members of the outing saw my uncle and me squeeze out of the shop together, both of us cat-licked and brushed in our Sunday best, they snarled like a zoo. "Are you bringing a boy?" asked Mr. Franklin. As we climbed into the charabanc, he looked at me with horror. "Boys, eh? Nasty," said Mr. Weasley. "He hasn't paid his contributions," Will Sentry said. "No room for boys. Boys get sick in charabancs." "So do you, Enoch Davis," said my uncle. "Might as well bring women." The way they said it, women were worse than boys. "Better bring in grandfathers." "Grandfathers is nasty too," said Mr. Weasley. "What do we do when we stop for refreshments?" "I'm a grandfather," said Mr. Weasley. 26 minutes to go," shouted an old man in a Panama hat, not looking at the watch. They forgot me at once. "Good old Mr. Cadwallader," they cried, and the charabanc started off down the village street. A few cold women stood at their doorways grimly watching us go. A very small boy waved goodbye and his mother boxed his ears. It was a beautiful August morning. We were out of the village and over the bridge and up the hill towards Steeple Hat Wood, when Mr. Franklin, with his list of names in his hand, called out loud, "There's old Dod Jones." "There's old Dod? We left Dodo behind." "Can't go without Dodo." And though Mr. Weasley hissed all the way, we turned and drove back to the village. We're outside the Prince of Wales. Old Dod Jones was waiting patiently and alone with a canvas bag. "I didn't want to come at all," old Dod Jones said, as they hoisted him into the charabanc, clapped him on the back, pushed him on a seat, and stuck a bottle in his hand. "But I always go." And over the bridge and up the hill and along the deep green woods and under the dusty road we wove, slow cows and ducks flying by, until "Stop the bus!" Mr. Weasley cried. "I left my teeth on the mansion." "Never you mind," they said. "You're not going to bite nobody." And they gave him a bottle with a straw. "I might put you smile," he said. "Not you," they said. "What's the time, Mr. Cadwallader?" 12 minutes to go," shouted the old man in the Panama, and they all began to curse him. The charabanc pulled up outside the Mountain Sheep, a small and happy public house with a thatched roof like a wig with ringworm. From the flagpole by the gents fluttered the flag of Siam. I knew it was the flag of Siam because of cigarette cards. The landlord stood at the door to welcome us, simpering like a wolf. "What a beautiful August day," he said, and he touched his love claw with a claw. Oof. That was the way he must have greeted the mountain sheep before he ate it, I said to myself. The members rushed out bleating and into the bar. "You keep an eye on the chara," said my uncle. "See nobody steals it now." "There's nobody to steal it," I said, "except some cows." But my uncle was already dustily blowing his bugle in the bar. I looked at the cows opposite. They looked at me. Nothing else for us to do. 45 minutes passed like a very slow cloud. The sun shone down on the lonely road, the lost, unwanted boy, and the lake-eyed cows. In the dark bar, they were so happy they were breaking glasses. A Shawnee onion Breton man bicycled down the road and stopped at the door. "Carmarthenshire," I said. "There's French boy Bach," he said. I followed him down the passage and peered into the bar. I could hardly recognise the members of the outing. They had all changed colour. Beetroots and rhubarb and puce. They hollered and rollicked in that dark, damp hole like enormous ancient bad boys. And my uncle surged in the middle of them, all red whiskers and bellies. On the floor was broken glass and Mr. Weasley. "Drinks all round," cried Bob the Fiddle. A small, absconding man with bright blue eyes and a plump smile. "Who's been robbing the orphans? Who sold his little Bobby to the gypos? Trust old Bob, he'll let you down."
You will have your little joke, said Bob the Fiddle, smiling like a razor. But I forgive you, boys. Out to the fag and babel I heard, come on, and fight. No, not now, later. No, now when I'm in a temper. Look at Will's sentry, he's proper snobbled. Look at his wilful feet. Look at Mr. Weasley lodging it on the floor. Mr. Weasley got up hissing like a gander. Now, boy, push me down the bit, he said, pointing to me at the door. And I slunk away down the passage to the mild wood cow. Time clouded over. The cows wondered. I threw a stone at them, and they wandered, wandering away. Then out blew my uncle ballooning, and one by one the members lumbered after him in a drizzle. They had drunk the mountain sheep dry. Mr. Weasley had won a string of onions that the Shawnee onion man had raffled in the bar. I said, go on again. If you left your teeth on the mantelpiece, he said. And when I looked through the back window of the thundering charabanc, I saw the pub grow smaller in the distance, and the flag of Sire and the flagpole by the gents fluttered now at half-mast. The blue bull, the dragon, the star of Wales, the tush in the wall, the sour grapes, the shepherd's arms, the bells of Aberdyfi. I had nothing to do in the whole wild August world but remember the names of the outing stopped and keep an eye on the charabanc. And whenever it passed a public house, Mr. Weasley would cough like a billy goat and cry, "Stop the piss! I'm dying of breath!" And back we would all have to go. Closing time meant nothing to the members of that outing. Behind locked doors they hymned and rumpused all the beautiful afternoon. And when a policeman entered the Druid's tap by the back door and found them all choral with beer, "Shh, no abode," said. "The pub is shut." "Where do you boys come from?" he said in his button blue voice. They told him. "I got Auntie there," the policeman said, and very soon he was singing Asleep in the Deep. Off we drove again at last, the charabanc bouncing with tenors and flagons, and came to a river that rushed along among willows. "Water!" they shouted. "Porthcawl!" sang my uncle. "There's a donkey," said Mr. Weasley, and out they lurched to paddle and whoop in the cool, white, winding water. Mr. Franklin, trying to polka on the slippery stones, fell in twice. "Nothing is simple," he said, with dignity, as he oozed up the dam. "It's cold," they cried. "It's lovely. It's smooth as a half snow. It's better than Porthcawl." And dusk came down, warm and gentle, on 30 wild, wet, pickle-splashing men without a care in the world, at the end of the world in the west of Wales. And who goes there? Called Will Sentry, to a wild, flying duck. They stopped at the Hermit's Nest for a run to keep at the cold. "I play for Laugharne in 1898. said a stranger to Enoch Davis. "Liar," said Enoch Davis. "I can show you a photo," said the stranger. "Forged," said Enoch Davis. "I'll show you a charabanc. Stolen. "I got friends to prove it," the stranger said in a fury. "Bribed," said Enoch Davis. On the way home through the simmering moon-splashed dark, old Jones began to cook his supper on a primer stove in the middle of the charabanc. Mr. Weasley coughed himself blue in the smoke. "Stop the bud! I'm dying of breath." We all climbed down into the moonlight. There was not a public house in sight. So they carried out the remaining cases and the primer stove and old Jones himself, and took them into a field and sat down in a circle in the field and drank and sang while old Jones cooked sausage and mash, and the moon flew above us. And there I drifted to sleep on Uncle's mountainous waistcoat. And as I slept, who goes there? Called out Will Sentry to the flying moon. Thank you very much.